Tonight, in a decision that will be studied for years to come, the Supreme Court has blocked former President Donald Trump's sweeping tariff plan. This landmark ruling, delivered after months of heated debate and anticipation, marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle over presidential power and economic policy in the United States. The news has sent shockwaves across the nation and reverberated around the world. From bustling city centers to quiet rural towns, Americans are tuning in, eager to understand what this means for their future. International markets are reacting and world leaders are watching closely, aware that this decision could reshape global trade dynamics. This isn't just about economics, it's about jobs, prices, and the very balance of power in our government. For millions of workers, business owners, and families, the stakes are deeply personal. The cost of everyday goods, the security of American jobs, and the strength of our industries all hang in the balance. Meanwhile, lawmakers in Washington are already debating the broader implications for the separation of powers and the limits of executive authority. The ruling directly challenges the extent of presidential authority, setting a powerful new precedent for how America handles trade disputes and economic policy. Legal experts say this decision could redefine the boundaries of executive power for generations, influencing not just this administration, but all those that follow. For some, it's a victory for free trade and democracy, a sign that checks and balances are alive and well, and that no single leader can unilaterally reshape the nation's economic destiny. Supporters of the ruling argue that it protects consumers from higher prices and keeps America open to global commerce. For others, however, it's a setback that limits the president's power to protect American industries from foreign competition. Critics warn that without strong executive action, vital sectors like steel and manufacturing could suffer, leading to job losses and economic uncertainty in communities that depend on them. Trump's tariffs were designed to bring jobs back to American soil and reduce the nation's persistent trade deficit. Supporters believe these measures would level the playing field and restore American manufacturing might. But the tariffs also sparked fierce debate, with opponents arguing they raised costs for businesses and consumers alike and risked trade wars with key allies. The fierce opposition to the tariffs, both in Congress and across the country, ultimately led to this dramatic legal showdown. The courtroom battle featured passionate arguments from both sides, with lawyers, economists, and industry leaders weighing in on the far-reaching consequences of the president's actions. As we move forward, the big questions remain. How will this historic decision affect upcoming elections, the health of American businesses, and the daily lives of ordinary Americans? Will it change the way future presidents approach trade, or inspire new legislation to clarify the limits of executive power? Tonight, we break it all down, exploring the legal, economic, and political fallout from the Supreme Court's historic ruling, and what it means for the future of America and the world. To understand today's ruling, we need to revisit Trump's America First trade agenda. Trump argued that free trade deals hurt American workers, and that tariffs would level the playing field, especially against China. His administration imposed tariffs on steel, aluminum, and billions in Chinese goods, sparking a trade war and retaliation that hit U.S. farmers and exporters hard. Supporters saw tariffs as a defense of American jobs and sovereignty, while critics warned they were attacks on consumers and risked economic instability. The debate over tariffs polarized the nation, setting the stage for years of legal and political battles. That battle has now reached its climax at the Supreme Court. On August 1st, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that Trump's broad tariffs exceeded presidential authority. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that only Congress can make sweeping changes to trade policy, not the executive branch. The case centered on whether national security laws justified such tariffs. The court said they did not. Dissenting justices argued the president needs flexibility to protect U.S. interests, but the majority disagreed. The ruling halts new broad tariffs without congressional approval and questions the legality of some existing ones. This decision redefines presidential economic power for a generation. The Supreme Court's decision isn't just a headline, it's something that could have a real, tangible effect on your everyday life and your wallet. When the highest court in the land weighs in on trade policy, the ripple effects are felt far beyond Washington, D.C. This ruling will shape the prices you see at the store, the stability of your job, and even the choices you have as a consumer. Without the introduction of new tariffs, prices on imported goods, like electronics, clothing, and furniture, are expected to stabilize. This means that the recent trend of rising costs for everyday items could slow down, offering some relief to families who have been feeling the pinch of inflation. For many households, this could translate to more predictable grocery bills, affordable back-to-school shopping, and less sticker shock when upgrading appliances or tech gadgets. In short, your paycheck might stretch a little further. For businesses, especially those that rely on global supply chains, the decision brings a new level of certainty. Companies can now plan ahead with more confidence, knowing that sudden tariff hikes are less likely. This stability encourages investment, helps protect jobs, and can even lead to new hiring as businesses grow. Small business owners, in particular, may find it easier to manage costs and keep their doors open. However, not everyone is celebrating. Industries like auto manufacturing and technology, which depend on imported parts and materials, are breathing a sigh of relief. But for domestic steel and aluminum producers, the ruling is a setback. They worry about renewed foreign competition, which could lead to job losses and factory closures. The decision highlights the ongoing tension between protecting American industries and keeping prices low for consumers. The trade deficit, the gap between what the U.S. imports and exports, may persist since one of the main tools used by the previous administration to address it is now off the table. This could have long-term implications for the economy, affecting everything from currency values to the strength of American manufacturing. While economists continue to debate how much the trade deficit really matters, the political fight over trade policy is far from over. Some argue that free trade benefits everyone, while others believe stronger protections are needed for American workers. The Supreme Court's decision has only intensified this debate, with both sides gearing up for the next round of policy battles. Ultimately, the ruling leaves a significant policy gap that Congress must now address. Lawmakers will need to decide how to balance the interests of consumers, businesses, and workers in a rapidly changing global economy. The choices they make in the coming months could shape the financial future of millions of Americans. Politically, the ruling has shaken both parties. For Republicans, it deepens the divide between populists who wanted tariffs and pro-business leaders who prefer free trade. Populists see the court as undermining their agenda, while traditionalists welcome a return to market-driven policies. Democrats are also split. Progressives and unions want worker protections, but many favor open trade. The decision shifts the trade debate from the White House to Congress, forcing lawmakers to take a stand. Trade will be a central issue in upcoming elections, with candidates pressed for real policy details. The future of American trade will now be decided in Congress, not by executive order. Across the country, reactions are mixed. Midwest farmers, once battered by retaliatory tariffs, feel relief and hope for stability. In the industrial heartland, steelworkers fear job losses as foreign competition returns. Tech companies on the West Coast celebrate as global supply chains and innovation are protected. Small business owners are split, importers are relieved, but some manufacturers feel exposed. The ruling highlights that trade policy creates both winners and losers, often in the same community. The economic reality is complex, and the debate over protectionism versus free trade is far from over. The world is watching America's trade drama unfold. The EU and Asian allies welcome the ruling, hoping it means fewer trade wars and more stability. Japan and South Korea see it as a win for supply chains, while China calls for dialogue but remains wary. Global markets rallied on the news, betting on less disruption from U.S. tariffs. Yet foreign governments know U.S. trade policy could still shift with politics. The ruling is seen as positive for global growth, but uncertainty remains. America's internal debate has global consequences, and the world is paying close attention. Legal experts across the country are weighing in on the recent ruling, emphasizing that it marks a significant shift in the balance of power within the federal government. They say the decision reasserts Congress's constitutional authority over trade policy, a domain that, for decades, has gradually shifted toward the executive branch. This move, they argue, is not just a technical legal adjustment, but a fundamental recalibration of how major economic decisions are made in the United States. By curbing decades of executive overreach, the ruling sends a clear message. The power to shape the nation's trade relationships and economic future must rest with the people's elected representatives, not with unilateral executive action. Professor Amelia Vance, a leading authority on constitutional law, describes this moment as a much-needed reset. She explains that for years, presidents from both parties have expanded their influence over trade, often bypassing the rigorous debate and oversight that Congress is designed to provide. Now with this ruling, big economic decisions, such as imposing tariffs, negotiating trade deals, or responding to global market shifts, are being forced back into the legislative process. This means lawmakers must engage in open debate, negotiate compromises, and ultimately be accountable to their constituents for the choices they make. From an economic perspective, experts like Dr. Mark Jennings see the decision as a positive development. He argues that when Congress takes the lead, policies are more likely to be carefully considered, reducing the risk of costly mistakes or abrupt policy changes that can disrupt markets. Jennings believes this approach encourages smarter, more targeted policies that address the real needs of American businesses and workers, rather than serving short-term political interests. However, not everyone is convinced. Critics like Dr. Sarah Chen warn that the ruling could leave vulnerable industries exposed to sudden shifts in global competition. Without swift executive action, she says, sectors like manufacturing and agriculture may struggle to adapt, putting jobs and communities at risk. Dr. Chen points out that, while the intention is to protect democratic processes, there is currently no clear alternative mechanism to quickly shield American workers from economic shocks or unfair foreign practices. Political scientists, meanwhile, see the ruling as a catalyst for a more open and democratic debate on trade policy. They argue that, for the first time in years, the public will have a front-row seat as lawmakers deliberate and defend their positions on issues that affect millions of Americans. This new era of transparency means that elected officials can no longer hide behind executive orders or bureaucratic decisions. Instead, they must publicly justify their choices, answer tough questions, and face the political consequences of their votes. The process, experts agree, will likely be messy and contentious. Heated debates, partisan disagreements, and legislative gridlock are almost certain. But many believe this is a necessary part of returning to a truly representative government, especially on issues as critical as trade and the economy. Ultimately, the ruling is seen as a reaffirmation of the principles of checks and balances, ensuring that no single branch of government can unilaterally dictate the nation's economic destiny. The impact of this decision will ripple through the legal system, reshape economic strategies, and influence political debates for years to come. As the dust settles, one thing is clear: the conversation about who controls America's economic future is just beginning, and its outcome will shape the nation for generations. With the Supreme Court's decision, the future of U.S. trade policy is now in Congress's hands. Lawmakers face tough choices, balancing free trade, protectionism, and the needs of workers, businesses, and consumers. Expect a wave of new bills and heated debate as both parties try to shape America's global economic role. For citizens, this is a chance to engage, follow the debate, ask questions, and make your voice heard. The ruling is not the end, but the start of a new chapter in America's economic story. The path forward will be contentious, but it's an opportunity to build a fairer, more competitive future. The story of American trade is far from over.